QA now it's from National Taiwan University, and I let you introduce your topic, the overview of resilience disaster. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction, Chairman's introduction. And the topic I would like to present today is an overview of the resilience disaster from theory to practice. My name is Paul William, and I'm from the Department of Bioenvironmental Systems Engineering, National Taiwan University. I'm aware of that my topic actually is a little bit different from others. So if this doesn't make sense to you, so basically I'm talking about the resilience about civil engineering. If to be a little bit more specific, I'm talking about the bridge structure. So this is the outline of today's presentation. First, I will give you some background. Then is the available approach in our field. Then is one of the case studies recently we have done, in which we have three subtitles here. I will give you a very brief introduction of our problem and our research plan and the uncertainty we consider in our project. And in the end is the conclusion. So this is the background. Ideally is I would like to give you some ideas of the resilience in our field. But actually resilience actually has been involved in many different domains. For example, from ecology or psychology. So taking the ecology, for example, is the Professor Holding in the year of 1973, he tried to define the resilience. The way he tried to define is the persistence of relationship within a system. In details, what does that mean? Persistence is he tried to mention that that's the system's ability to absorb the change state variable, driving variable, and the parameters. So because I'm from actually the civil engineering related field, so I go to the website of the American Society of Civil Engineering and try to see what's the definition there. So this is the definition. Basically, maybe I just read through it quickly. The capability to mitigate against a significant or hazardous risk and the incidents, and then to quickly recover and reconstitute the critical surface within minimal damage to public safety and health, the economy, and the national security. So basically, there is a very well-known professor from University of Maryland. He is also, of course, from civil engineering. This is the way to try to define resilience in civil engineering. Basically, it's quite similar to the ASC or the earlier definition, which is the system is the persistence of its function and the performance under uncertainty. But the reason I provide Professor Ayub a definition here is because one of his focus is also our focus here, is the uncertainty. Because actually in reality, the uncertainty is everywhere. So based on the background of we provide earlier, effectively the idea, the concept of the resilience is trying to provide a solid basis for decision makers. So the definition of resilience should be have the ability to help people to prepare the plan or to recover from the hazards. So as we mentioned earlier, uncertainty is everywhere. So we hope we can consider the event as an occurrence rate of the stochastic process. So one of the differences from Professor Ayub, he also considered that is because for civil engineering structure, actually, if the life of your structure goes longer, the longer your function will get decreased. So this is what we call aging effect here. So, but the most important thing is because resilience in civil engineering actually is a quite new concept or quite new terminology. So when people bring these quite new ideas to our research field, hopefully this idea can be capabilities with other familiar index, such as if we try to consider uncertainty, we're talking about reliability or risk. So we hope this new terminology can be consistent with the terminology we already get used to it. So the other important thing is this new terminology. We hope the concept of this new technology, how does it affect the routine design procedure for an engineer? Because for an engineer, actually, for example, they design a building, they design a bridge. Actually, this is a routine procedures. So So when we bring this new concept, what's the influence in his design procedure? So then I will introduce the available approach for the resilience. So this is in the earlier day in the year of the 2007. So in here, the y-axis is trying to give you the performance index for our target, which could be a bridge or a building. So if then nothing happens, so the performance index will be 100, that means equal to 1. If there is an earthquake or flood occurred, so our performance index will drop. Then if this is the recovery time how we're talking about. So maybe we do something, so the function of our building is recovered. So but take time. So this is famous what we call the resilience triangle. So that means actually this is the resilience we lost. So based on this plot, actually we can have a mathematical form of the resilience. This is the integration of our performance function, which is the area under this curve. So this is just the normalization factors. So this is another definition about how we define the resilience. So as you can see, this plot actually is similar to the previous one, but a little bit more complicated. But a similar idea is at the very beginning, our performance index actually is equal to 1. So there's nothing lost. But however, here, if something happened, we lost our resilience. So this is the loss of R, and this is our resilience. So similar formula has been proposed. But his focus is a little bit different here because we are focused on the loss, is not how many resilience we remain. So the target here is trying to evaluate the loss of resilience here. So another thing here is, actually this is the recovery time, but there are different times trying to evaluate the recovery rate. For example, this is the exponential. So exponential means at the accident occurred at the very beginning, we already put so many efforts, so the recovery rate is quite quick, very fast. So this is what we call trigonometric curve. So as you can see, at the very beginning stage, actually the recovery rate is quite slow. So usually this kind of curve is applied to, for example, like the natural disasters like an earthquake or flood. And this is the linear curve. Linear curve means the recovery rate at any time actually is a constant number. Constant number means actually we do not have too much information about the recovery rate. So when we do not have any information, so this is quite often we just assume this is a linear function here. So then this is an approach adopted in our study is, as we just mentioned earlier, is how we focus right now is the loss of the resilience. But what we focus here actually is, as we mentioned, is we try to consider uncertainty. So on the left-hand side is what we call deterministic approach. So what we focus here is actually this is you can consider this is the capacity, this is the demand. If in a deterministic approach is both factor actually they're just a fixed number here. So it's a vertical line here. But this is not true in reality. So this is the true situation, and this is the situation we consider here. Both capacity and demand actually, this just for example is they have some variation. For example, like normal distribution or not normal distribution. So in earlier research study, for example, the factor affect this probability evaluation. They have three major factors here. For example, for civil engineering, earthquake is one of the big issues. So the intensity of the ground motion is very important. The other one is even we have identical intensity of the ground motion, actually structural response will be different. So there is also another uncertainty here. So the input has uncertainty, the response has an uncertainty. The other thing is the post-hazard recovery time. That's the delta T as we mentioned earlier. So this is a little bit more, this is I adopt from Professor Ayub from University of Maryland, introduced earlier. So this is a little bit more complicated plot, but however, as we mentioned, he considered the aging effect. So if the building getting older, actually the performance index actually will also getting older. And because of this consideration, actually they will affect several things. For example, earlier we're talking about recovery rate. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 blue lines here. So because we consider this age effect, so also affect our recovery rate. The other thing he considered here is actually when the accident occurred, actually it depends on our structure is brittle or ductile. If we are ductile structure, actually your decreasing rate will also a little bit slower. So this is our case study. After we just very quickly review what is the resilience in civil engineering. So we try to provide a failure probability of LOR as we defined earlier. So here, a little bit different is because in Taiwan we have two major hazards. One is seismic, the other is flood. So we try to consider these two major hazards at the same time. So this is earlier, this is one of the equations used in the other studies. So I just would like to mention that there's three major factors here. I already mentioned earlier: seismic intensity, structural response, and the recovery time. But in our study here, recovery time is because we do not have too much information, so we assume this is a linear function here. So our focus will be on the first two. And this is a real case in the southern part of Taiwan, actually quite close to here, this hospital. This is when a typhoon Morocco attacked Taiwan. This is a very famous Gaoping Daqiao. Actually, it's collapsed. But actually, this bridge just reconstruct or retrofitting just very recently. So we are very surprised. So we go through all the river basin, try to investigate so many different bridges, try to figure out what's the factors affect the safety of the bridge. And this is one of our little conclusion here is the slope of the riverbed, or if the bridge side actually located in the riverbed, or the blocking area of the bridge, or the scoring depth. Actually, the most important factor is the scoring depth. And based on the literature review, we find out the coefficient of variation of the scoring depth is 0.7. 0.7 actually in our field is quite variety. So this is the reason, because when we perform the reliability analysis or we consider the risk, actually we try to reduce this number here. Because this number here is the biggest one, so we take this as our target right here. So we would like to predict the score depth of a bridge. So basically we need to have data, then we can, the artificial intelligence nowadays is quite popular, so we need to have the data first. So basically our research plan is here, we collect all the literature data, and then we try to figure out what lack of the data or what's the weakness of our data on hand. Then we perform additional testing, try to make our data a little bit more complete. So this is how we call, because why the score depth of a bridge is so difficult to predict is this is a very complex situation here. Because the bridge, actually there are three different sections. As you can see, this is the headways from the United States. So this is interaction between three different components. So this is the literature data we collect. As you can see, this is the prediction formula. The prediction outcome actually is not very well. And this is another formula from the United States, a little bit better. This is maybe a little better, but not good enough. So then we come up with this is a design testing plan. We perform these experiments in the Tokushima University in Japan. Because we figure out actually when the riverbed level is at least right here, then two reasons. We do not have too much data for this case. The other reason is even we have some data in this case, but the prediction outcome is the worst in this case. So we perform some additional tests. This is what we call score depth here. This is in Japan. Then we come up with our new formula using optimization technique or artificial intelligence. So we have a better prediction formula right here. So then we are ready to calculate the joint failure probability here. Because the flood and the earthquake, actually they are very rare event. So we are assuming that they are independent. So basically we need to consider two hazards. One is seismic hazard, the other is the scour hazard. So this is our bridge model here. This is the bridge location in the central part of Taiwan. This is a picture for the bridge we consider. This is the design drawing. Based on design drawing, we build our model. This is, earlier we mentioned that the intensity of the ground motion. But maybe for your information, in the earthquake, actually usually we use the PGA, peak ground acceleration. But however, I think I think most of you are not from civil engineering. But for the earthquake, intensity of ground motion, actually, if the period is same as the building, so maybe the response of the building will be the biggest one. So actually, the intensity we use the ground motion, basically we will use the spectral acceleration here. So when the collect earthquake record, we need to normalize to the design spectral observation. So we collect all the similar earthquake ground motion records, then we perform a time history analysis. Then we build what we call prejudicial, basically it's conditional probability. So that means if you give in the peak ground acceleration, we can know the damage level for each ring. Okay, this is the seismic hazard curve, and maybe time is long. So, okay. So maybe this is the last two slides I would like to introduce is, because we are considered two hazards together. So usually you will see the fragility curve is in only 2 dimensions. This is 3 dimension. So although it's colorful, but for example, like if people will maybe sometimes get confused if the skull depth actually go bigger, but however the value probability goes smaller. But this is because we consider the accuracy of this kind of bigger skull depth actually is also smaller. So, but however, 3-dimensional is very difficult for engineering to use. So we cut to the 2-dimensional, and then we try to find a specific value for them to design. So this is a conclusion. The only one conclusion I would like to mention once more is, because at the very beginning of this presentation, we asked ourselves is, this new concept, how is it affect our design routines? So because for engineers, they don't deal with the reliability analysis, the uncertainty analysis, the risk analysis. So in the end, we would like to provide a very specific guideline is, you can just follow your routine design guideline as long as for this particular bridge, as long as you just consider skull depth is equal to 5. And if you have skull depth is equal to 5, your bridge is still okay. Under the current design guideline, then your bridge is okay for the resilience. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. So yes, some contrast to the first paper on the methodology and discipline. Thank you. It should make for an interesting discussion. Next, I'd like to invite Abigail De Puerto and her colleagues. So from the Philippines, thank you for coming to Taiwan, your neighbor, and on humanizing mental health research in disaster situations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Are you still awake? Yes, I can see that. All right. Thank you. I'm Abby. I am from the Philippines, and I work with an NGO called Balik Kalipay Center for Psychosocial Response. Balik Kalipay is basically a Visayan term. Kalipay means happiness. Balik means return, so it's return to happiness. This presentation, this paper is co-written with Naftali Botor, who is actually a professor of human and family ecology back home, and with Dr. June Lopez, who is a trauma expert, a psychiatrist. Alright, so what does our organization do? We actually provide mental health and psychosocial support in disaster situations. So that's with disaster victims, survivors, and also first responders. Anyone here who considers himself or herself a disaster survivor? Natural or man-made? Dr. M earlier actually defined disaster, right? So it's something that really destabilizes us, not only the infrastructures, but also, psychologically, mentally, emotionally. Now, one of the things we are asked to do when there are disasters is actually to assess the needs. Do we agree with this exercise of assessing the needs before actually providing service? Yes, that's very important, no? So what we do is we assess the needs, and we can do that especially when there are requests, because of course, as you know, resources are scarce. Now, when there are disasters such as Typhoon Haiyan, which happened in 2013, a lot of humanitarian aid workers actually flew in, pledged support And a lot have also asked the organization to assess the needs of the community. So that's what we did. We prepared the community, meaning convened some participants and then assessed their needs. And their needs assessment and the resource mapping now becomes the basis for provision of services. So what we have here is basically the pyramid of intervention, which starts from basic services up to the specialized services, and that is in the context of mental health. So that's our first model. Now, we did that primarily to 3 communities, Iloilo, 1 month after the global typhoon, Super Typhoon Haiyan. We also have Samar, 2 months after Haiyan, and we also have Tacloban. And who are the participants? These are in groups of 30 to 40 women, teachers and principals, children, first responders, and LGU officials. What do we do? When we do needs assessment, it's not just doing like focus group discussions or interviews. What we do usually is have them in workshops, such as this. And then we do timelining activity, during the disaster, after the disaster, how does the disaster affect your whole being, etc. And then, as a synthesis, we provide the MHPS's orientation, or what does mental health and psychosocial support mean? How do we now map the needs and resources vis-a-vis this pyramid of intervention? So that's what we do. Okay, but I'd like to show you a video, which is the case of Krishna, to provide us backdrop of how else this process led us. It's a 4-minute video, but promise I won't take long after this. I hope you can see the subtitle.
Someone likes it.
Tapos yung nanay niya, nakita niya rin yun. Ang problema, nung lumaki na yung alon, hindi niya nakakita pa. Hanggang sa nakakita pa. Tsaka nakalayo pa kung nakakita. Tapos yung time na may pumunta siya sa tiyan niya. Pumunta pa naman. Bumalik sila dito yung 4 kami sa kanila na nakita ang alam nila. Ngayon, hanap na sila ng hanap ang hindi na nakapag sa kanila. Pero wala nang umaten siya na umaten. Pagpili-pili ko ang mga dati na tayo pa kami umaten ng training. Ang sinasali din. Kung sila sa tao ko, problema pa mga parang mangyayat ang problema. And then, nilalala niya ko ang mga workshop, binibigyan din. Tapos, yun lang, ang pagtutulong sa natuto siya pakialibin sa natutuloy sa mga kahit sa mga tapos parang ang kaya ito.
Thank you very much. So the video was, of course, taken with the consent of everyone. I hope that's not traumatizing in any way. So what if some of the audience are like Christians? And then we just started, our own thing. Assess the needs. What they need, blah, blah, blah. So not all disaster survivors are traumatized, that's true. But it is always better to assume that there is one or a few who may be. Yes, so what is the right thing to do? To care, first and foremost, is what's ethical. And then to gather information could go next, right? Now, MHPSS is really about this too, protecting or promoting psychosocial well-being and then preventing treating mental disorders. Now, from Model 1, which we did in the next 4 months after Yolanda or Haiyan, we evolved to Model 2. And we started rejecting organizations who've been asking us to just conduct needs and resource mapping without provision for any services, without provision for, for an intervention that would actually uplift the dignity of the people, because participants actually felt just used. If, you get information from us and then you leave. And then you present the paper, you publish it. But they are always, in the first few months, specifically, they are still there in the survival mode. And it's down spiral from them. When we come in, we ask a lot of questions. Research or assessment of needs and resources is a very cognitive exercise, right? And then we ask them to provide us information, okay? Because honestly, we need the information in order to also plan for intervention, to plan for services. Because there is actually a lot of organizations who also do not conduct their own needs and resource mapping. Like just one organization who, of course, they know that all those communities depend on fishing for their living. And they learned that, these fishermen lost their boats. So what they did was brought a lot of boats, like hundreds, thousands of boats. And then they didn't realize that the fishermen didn't actually want to go fishing. Because there are a lot of dead bodies in the ocean. So they lack this. Organizations lack this. We do not need to miss that. But what is the ethical thing to do? Now, as an interventionist, as clinical psychologist, I'm still training, by the way, we realize that at the least, the minimum we could provide them is the psychosocial processing, make them tell and retell their story so that it could help in their recovery process. It may not be just, it should not be just one time, but sometimes because of lack of resources, again, that's the minimum we could provide. But for the case of Christian, that's the ideal. We provided some, psychosocial processing, and then attached to that is the assessment. While we are processing, we are asking them to tell and retell their stories. That's already qualitative research, right? again with their consent that we are documenting everything. And then it moved on to training, community organizing, until the community people themselves learned how to identify, oh, maybe she's not doing well. It's not just about being lazy. This person doesn't have, zest for life anymore. Is he a candidate for depression, etc.? And that's because of the training. So this is our BKC model, which looks like this. We start with a minimum response. We consider it's a tool, a psychosocial processing. It's a group work still. That's after community preparation. We assess the needs, but that's only after, providing them some relief, some psychological relief. And then lastly, we plan the comprehensive intervention for them. So this is a sample of psychosocial processing. And this is the most wordy slide I have here. So after psychosocial processing and needs and resource mapping should be, yes, a basis for planning a more comprehensive disaster response. It should capitalize on people's strengths and emphasize the role of mental health and overall well-being, which we call kaginhawaan in our own language. It should be an opportunity to continue building therapeutic alliances and work on healing and recovery and enhance resilience and the lost sense of dignity through participation and culturally based creative methodologies. So it actually sits on the MHPS as core principles, which guarantee ethics. If only the humanitarian aid workers know this, interventionists, researchers know this, then there should be no problem. In disaster situations, humanizing research is in the hands of the researcher. And then the researcher must not just be a fisher of information for research's sake in this context of needs and resource mapping, but a true sojourner in people's healing and recovery towards optimal mental health and well-being. That's my end of the slide. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you for the video and the story that you presented. I'd like to ask the fourth speaker, please, Zufri, from University of Malaysia. And thank you also for coming to Taiwan, to the ABC. Talking about diffusion of science and technology in agriculture towards sustainable communities, issues and challenges. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum. Okay, this is my research project with my LA and also my student. Okay, Ms. Clara Chun, and my title for presentation today is Diffusion of Science and Technology in Agriculture towards sustainable communities or societies, issues and challenges. Right, this outline of my presentation. The pictures show computer node, which is located in Sabah, is Malaysia. Okay, basically, why we choose Tenong? Because one of the reasons is Tenong is the greatest contributor to the income of the society, food supplier to other districts such as Sipitang, Beaufort and Keneo, as well as the state food production, which is Sabah. The third one is provide abundance of agricultural products such as coffee, oil palm, rubber, grain and so on. And then Sabah, especially Tenong, also as a tourist attraction for agriculture. Okay, Tenong actually located in Sabah state, which is located east of Malaysia. Alright, so refer to my title, actually I try to focus on how to achieve a sustainable society. Okay? So in define sustainable society, we can define as three dimensions or three aspects, which is the first one is protecting and enhancing the environment, meeting social need, and the last one or the third one is promoting economic success. So in this project, we try to meet or to fit to the second definition of sustainable society, which is focus on meet local needs locally wherever possible, maximize everyone access to the skill and knowledge needed to play a full part in society, and we define as that also include science and technology in society. That's why we try to study the diffusion of science and technology in Tenong. Alright, for the case study, it actually involves two organizations or institutions. The first one is Lagot Seberang Agricultural Research Station, LSAS, and then Tenong Department of Agriculture, DOA, and then the last or the final users is Tenong Farmers Set. Okay, and then our question here is in order to achieve sustainable society, what are the issues and challenges faced by LSAS in terms of diffusion of science and technology in Tenong farmers? Maybe my research or my study here quite focused on socio-cultural factors that fall under sociology studies. And then we try to focus on three objectives. The first one is to examine the process on diffusion on science and technologies from LSAS to Tenong farmers. And the second one is to identify the issues and challenges faced by Lagot Seberang, LSAS, in order to diffuse science and technology to the farmers. And then the third one is to suggest recommendation in solving the challenges faced by LSAS in order to diffuse SNT to Tenong farmers. And then I show here some of definition and concept, but I will go just a brief explanation. Alright, definition of diffusion, including communicating innovation, knowledge transfer, knowledge exchange that I believe related to my research, which is from the institution, and then the knowledge or SNT itself transferred to the farmers. And then diffusion of SNT, diffusion part is influenced by technology of structure of social network, and then it involves a process of adoption, okay, continuous and slow process from the authorities to the end users. Okay, process of diffusion also studied in Spain. For example, in Spain we have three-tier model. Okay, central station, experimental, farm school, country, agricultural demonstration field, and Irish also hierarchical and neighborhood model. And taxation service in this case study, I think DOA, Department of Agriculture, played this role. And then farmers to farmers diffusion. This one is the last process in diffusion of science and technology in Tenong. Okay, so based on definition and concept, I try to study in detail the diffusion process, and then the issues and challenges, and then the recommendation for solution of the issues. Okay, this my student, Miss Clara, when we are doing interview with Mr. Adrian, head of coffee plantation, and then head of agriculture, head of crop plantation in Telom Sabah. And then our approach is also participatory observation. We attend not a conference but seminar or a program with the farmers in Telom Sabah. And then the last one is document analysis, which is we get the information from bulletin, okay, published once a month. Okay, we call Bingkisan. Alright, it is main office of ELSAS that we can consider as the first diffusion agent, right? So the Seberang function as R&D center, diffuse knowledge to farmers and Telom, DOA. So institution diffuse or transfer knowledge to also another institution, DOA, and seek funding, deal with private firm that related to agriculture, and then give training to the farmers. They doing research in coffee, plantation, crop, honeybee, agriculture, and herb and medicinal. And then this Telom Department of Agriculture. Actually, DOA is a government agency that is responsible to the farmers' development. So it functions as essential agent to spread or diffuse knowledge to farmers by organized commodity production project, farmers training program, festival to communicate and share information. Okay, and then the second one is DOA also doing nursery and seed production. This one involved with the latest technology in nursery. Okay, our research finding I divide into three. So the first one is diffusion process. So I divide into, I focus to coffee, crop and honeybee agriculture. So from the finding, for coffee, is focusing on solving farmers' problem. Here is just inspect and conduct the stand in farmers' farm. And then the medium of diffusion, which diffusion process, essential service by Telom DOA, farmers participation in research, training and education institute, Bingkisan publication and book, and then also festival. For the crop farming, assessment on finding the best species and most favored among existing crop to be planted in Telom, example cucumber, black nightshade, taro, corn, tongkat ali, long jack. And then medium of diffusion for crop farming is essential service by Telom DOA from ELSAS to DOA and then to the farmers. Bingkisan, also in terms of publication, festival, and then farmer to farmer diffusion and digital information. For honeybee agriculture, focusing more on promoting and introducing agriculture, specifically in keeping chlorotype. And then medium of diffusion, essential service by Telom DOA, open courses in ELSAS, individual private agent, in design publication, farmer to farmer diffusion. And then for issues and challenges, okay, for coffee farming, we found that the problem is inability of farmers to understand formal term. Example in farming return, maybe in terms of pH, okay, acid, alkali, and so on. And then less huge interested in agriculture, limited financial source, competition with other commercialized plantation, causing number of coffee farming to decrease from maybe small scale farmers. And then for coffee farming, we recommend that most of this issue are due to age of farmers. So this can be solved by providing more bridging program of coffee plantation and business, as this can attract more younger in this area. And then for crop farming, issues and challenges, some farmers choose not to adopt and adopted the method that have been exposed because of the climate and soil are different from other places. Farming activities influenced by the race of community that living in a particular area. Maybe this one refer to monopoly or domination for certain races. And then for recommendation, asking feedback regularly from farmers on farming as it's able to acquire their trust on accounting. And then for honeybee, issues and challenges, inability of farmers to understand scientific term, type of bees. This one refer to type of bee here for crop farming. Also, we have found that farmers are unable to understand scientific term. For example, when they use rambutan, if you know, okay, Nigerian black vacuum, for example, Peter Kevin and then and so on. And then for honeybee, less motivation of farmers to continue beekeeping. So we recommend that spread more on the advantage of consuming honey for nutrition and health, but influence them to farm bees. Right. So from the finding in the critical discussion, we think that all the problems that we found shows that the process of diffusion of SNT cannot only be done by applying any value to it directly, but by denying the existence of existing rational institutions of a society. Farmers' failure to accept modern values and practice is often placed on the farmer's fault. Then the existing institutions in society are considered traditional, non-scientific, and contrary to modern values. Similarly, in the context of the diffusion of scientific innovation that can cause many issues and challenges as a society exists with the support of its own social system. Sometimes, scientific innovation will cause a clash of values and culture in a society, which is ultimately revealed whether accepted by some group of society or perhaps rejection from some others. For the conclusion, in terms of sustainable society, agricultural, we agree that can enhance the economy of the society by providing more job opportunities to meet economic needs. However, if sustainable society is only seen from this point, it may be necessary to re-evaluate the process. In fact, development and sustainability of a society must meet the social need aspect, which will refer to the previous definition under second aspect of sustainable society. This is a reality when dealing with the agenda of sustainability. It does not necessarily can simply be done, but it requires the consideration of various variables in the process and understanding the social and economic of a society. Even we can, in fact, we can assume that the farmers respond issues and challenges that farm in Tenam Sabah, for instance, as normal and nothing critical. But for me, we need nuance and deeper explanation needed to this regard. Okay, so for that, I end my discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So it feels like we've really been in the fields in Malaysia. Thank you. The last paper in our session is by Dr. Bien Chen from National Tai Tung University. You may want to tell us where that is, and the Center of Austronesian Culture. So I'd like to introduce your topic towards a social-cultural, more informed mode of cooperation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair, for your introduction, and it's a pleasure to be here to share with you our recent project. Where is Taidong? Okay, Taidong is on the other side of the mountain of that vertically cut across Taiwan. It's like 2.5 hours train ride from Kaohsiung, where we are. It's basically on the southeast side. It's a coastal city, beautiful area. Hope you can all visit Taitung one of these days. If if you haven't done that yet. Okay, let's just start with my presentation. I'm going to tell you about a recent project we conduct under the funding of from MOST, Ministry of Science and Technology, and to establish closer collaboration between Taiwan's university or academic institution and what is called the New Southbound Policy Office of the Ministry of Science and Technology. The New Southbound Policy means establishing collaboration and mutual understanding between Taiwan and most of the Southeast Asia and South Asia countries, including Pacific country like New Zealand. Okay, so the main task is to establish a Taiwan-Indonesian Center of Southeast Asian Ethnicity, Culture, and Society, founded by MOST and conducted by the Center of Austronesian Culture in Taitung, National Taitung University. We established partnership with Universitas Tanjung Bulak in Pontianak, West Kalimantan, Indonesia, and center around humanity and social sciences, but aiming to build a platform to enhance multidisciplinary exchange and collaboration. What does Center of Austronesian Culture of National Taitung University do? Okay, it's a new center. It started operating in 2014. Its mission including promoting research, teaching, and learning of Austronesian culture, both inside and outside Taiwan, promoting scholarly and cultural exchange among Austronesian community worldwide, empowering Austronesian community both inside and outside of Taiwan through practice-oriented anthropological research, and enhance both research and practice network among institutional and individual agency in Taitung area. Now, in addition to where is Taitung, I think it will come to the point talking about what is Austronesian. Austronesian is a linguistic term denoting a language family that's in English literature. It was formerly called Malayo-Polynesian language family. Okay, so it covered this area from Taiwan. I could not show on this map, but the westmost point is Madagascar, offshore of continental Africa, and the southmost is New Zealand. Taiwan is the northmost point, and the eastmost point is the Easter Island. Okay, and from this map is from Australian prehistorian Peter Bellwood. He reconstructed this map, denoting, indicating the distribution, the dispersal of Austronesian family 2000 BC from mainland continental Asian continent to Taiwan, and from Taiwan to Philippines, Borneo, Indonesia, Malaysia, and eastward into the Pacific. Okay, you can see the date, the year. Okay, this is a map reconstructed based on archaeological and historical linguistic method. And since the southbound policy of Taiwan government is trying to establish connection between Taiwan and Southeast Asia, so it's an overview of Southeast Asia in terms of linguistic family. You can see that all this part, Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, and by country-wise, we are including Brunei and East Timor. Those are all Austronesian languages. You can see the shape, it's all the same. But on mainland Southeast Asia, it's more complicated. It includes linguistic family of Sino-Tibetan language, Tibeto-Burmese language, Thai language, Miao language, and this in Vietnam is called Kinh language. It's more complicated. So that's also the division between island, what we call island or insular Southeast Asia, and mainland Southeast Asia. And also, religious-wise, we can also see that the island Southeast Asia, we can divide it into, including three major worldwide religions. This shape indicates Islam, okay? It indicates Islam, and it covers most of island Southeast Asia as well, with the exception of Philippines. The northern Philippines was, because of colonial history, it has a more visible population of Catholic and Protestant. And also this shade in the interior of Borneo, including the central highland of Sulawesi and part of northern Sumatra, this is traditional language, traditional religion. Usually in anthropology we call it animism. Okay, and in mainland Southeast Asia, it's this horizontal line shade indicating Theravada Buddhism, and the darker shade in northern part of mainland Southeast Asia is a mixture of Theravada Buddhism and traditional animism. Okay, and in Vietnam, the vertical line shade means Chinese religion. Okay, so you can see that all the major world religions are covering the downriver, coastal, or plain area, and the interior, upriver, and highland area has a more popularity with traditional religion. Okay, so I just said we established this partnership between National Taiwan University, NTTU for short, and University of Tanjung Pula, Undan for short. There are several reasons. One is that in terms of ethnic composition, Taiwan has 97% of ethnic Chinese and 2.3% of Austronesian-speaking indigenous. Okay, but West Kalimantan is one of the provinces in Indonesia that has a higher percentage of Chinese population, only second to the province of Bangka Belitung. Okay, so if we look into the population composition of West Kalimantan, it includes Dayak, which is non-Muslim indigenous people, and Malay, Javanese, Bugis. Those are all Muslim Bumiputra population. That means offspring or son, daughter of the land. Okay, and also Chinese ethnic Chinese population include almost 30%. Okay, and it's locally more common to call them Yonghua. Okay, and this is also non-Muslim population. So all this this composition of the ethnic group and their religion all has implication, social cultural implication and has impact on the local politics. Okay, the collaborative center we built between NTTU and Undan is to try to promote scholarly and educational exchange. And to cut the talk short, I just want to point out that at the moment, one of the major tasks I assigned our colleague in Undan to conduct is to collect information about any information from the formal established news media and also internet chat room, any kind of information you can get about the operation of Taiwan or Chinese, meaning PRC, Taiwan or Chinese enterprises conducting business in Indonesia, whether there's any environmental concern or community impact, social cultural impact, labor relation, any dispute that the Taiwan-based enterprise or a China-based enterprise has caused in Indonesia. Because that is one of the mission of this center, is to help the investor or help entrepreneur, help enterprises to conduct more environmental friendly, culturally sensitive, and socially acceptable operation. And one reason that one of the ways we can carry out those projects is also trying to find out the on the ethnicity base, the difference and similarity between the Austronesian community in Taiwan and the general Austronesian population in Southeast Asia, and starting from Indonesia. These are some of the activities we have carried out, signing up an MOU and establishing of an office by NTTU in Undan. And we also sent students to Undan to take part in the summer program in 2018, which is about mangrove. Okay, these are the activity of those students. They get really dirty and share their cuisine. And we also conduct a field trip. The NTTU faculty also conduct field trip. For example, this is a field trip called Zhanglongmei. That is the 15 days of the first lunar month of lunar calendar. This is the gathering of the shaman. Shaman means spiritual medium. When it's not festival, in daily life, they conduct they serve as a counselor, or sometimes herbal medicine man, and also to help the family in the neighborhood. But in this festival day, they will all get together to pay tribute to the main temple. But one thing I want to point out is that by costume, you can see that this is a ethnic Chinese shaman. And these two truckloads are Dayak shaman, because they dress like in Dayak costume. However, in the spiritual media community here, you classify yourself as a Chinese shaman or a Dayak shaman, not by your own ethnic origin. It's by the ethnicity of the deity, of the God who possesses you. Okay, so if I'm possessed by a Dayak God, then I will dress like Dayak. If I'm possessed by a Chinese God, and I will dress in Chinese costume, it doesn't have to follow my own real ethnic identity. Okay, so that is one thing about ethnicity subject. And this is in mid-August. It coincides with in the Mandarin we call it Zhongyuanjie. This is a festival in West Kalimantan in particular. They build a beautiful boat and put their paper. They make paper doll and paper furniture on the boat that symbolize their ancestor, and they burn it. They burn it and symbolizing sending the ancestor spirit back to China. We also invite Undan's faculty to come to Taiwan, and and take them to visit Taipei Main Station. The reason why I take it to visit Taipei Main Station is that Taipei Main Station is becoming the major gathering place of Southeast Asian labor, migrant labor in Taiwan. Nowadays, there's also already 300,000 Indonesian migrant worker and unmarried spouse in Taipei. So they have gathering in the Taipei Main Station every Sunday. Okay, thank you for your listening. And this is a very brief presentation about what we are doing now.
Okay, thank you very much for all the presenters scattered around the room. I'd like to open questions. Who would like to ask a question?
Yes.
Yes, please, Miyako.
Just for the Abigail. Yeah. I think it's just a comment. But, that was a very interesting video. But we saw also the same video after the Tohoku disaster. A lot of times that was that kind of video. That so I saw the same. Looks like same video. And I don't know what maybe that kind of video changed to the Japanese mind, because before Tohoku disaster, if some disasters happened, the Japanese people sent to the things, for example, blanket, clothes, and then money, or like that things. But so sometimes they announce that no more things because we don't have space to have. But after the disaster, the Tohoku disaster, and especially young people go over there and help them, and so that does not happen before. So something changed in Japanese mind, and so that disaster is not very good things, but something if we can say that some good point is changing Japanese mind, and they support with they don't support with the things, but the real help. So that's yes.
That's a comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
What about the Philippines? So do disasters bring a sense of community togetherness?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes?
definitely. Disasters bring out both the best and the good, traits of any community, in a sense, of the Filipino people. May I just clarify about the sending of support from Japanese? Is this something to do between Japanese and Philippines, and particularly about Yolanda? Because we really have visits from Japan, from different organizations, and yeah, we actually try to work with them. Some things didn't pan out because of some concerns, resources, etc. But yeah, overall, honestly, at this moment, we still have a lot of issues to deal with when it comes to collaborating with the international community when it comes to disaster response. That's the truth, and I believe that is also true in other countries, cultures, for example. And then the thing is, we are really learning very well. I'd like to mention just one very concrete example when I myself was brokenhearted when I saw in social media that the vans containing relief goods from different countries were burnt by the customs, and I'm being very transparent here, and it's because, you know, this support weren't managed well. They really didn't, they weren't received by the people, and I'm not generalizing, there are just, you know, some, and people feel betrayed. That's part of the ethics we should understand. So thank you very much for your comment. I hope no bridges are burned. I mean, if anything about your comment. Thank you very much.
Okay, Banok, please.
This question goes to Adnan. Yeah, thank you for your presentation. And yeah, the developed country uses more energy than developing countries, and developing countries polluted more than developed countries. So it comes to my mind that the energy consumption and the pollution is closely related. Do you have any idea about that?
I think all developed countries as well as developing countries, they are all destroying the environment and the soil and the wind. They are everyone. The only thing is that there might be some difference, that is all. But they do destroy.
But
Because they kill animals also. They kill animals and they eat animals, most of the countries.
yeah, but as a human being, we must consume some energy and pollute some resources. So that is fate of human animals. So I think as you say, says human destroys everything, but I think the developed country uses energy to reduce some polluted materials, and I want to ask about it. I think that there's a close relationship between energy consumption and pollution.
Yes, do we have specific questions for the other presenters? Yes,
I
okay.
think that I have one
Teacher.
question for Professor John. I think that your center is really interesting. But like you say in the last word is terima which is also carry a universal meaning within the Indonesian nation state. But the issue you are tackling is about cultural diversity, especially the ethnic diversity. And however, as my personal journey, I always find it's a little bit sensitive issue for our nation, especially that a new nation state that is built upon, in fact, a diverse background, especially have a long-term historical journey. But afterward, as a post-colonial status, it's become a nation state. So it's probably partially a sensitive issue. And secondly, the sensitive issue go through if there are implications for international connections. That will be far more sensitive. So I just wondering that how you deal with this kind of issue as you are father.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, exactly. But we cannot say that we have understanding, a general, a comprehensive understanding on an attitude or the approach to deal with ethnicity issue in entire Southeast Asia. Well, I'm trained as an social cultural anthropologist. So we deal with things small scale and directly to face, based on face-to-face relationship. So in the task assigned to ourselves is basically the status of ethnic Chinese and their ethnic relationship with the Muslim group and the non-Muslim group. Those are two Bumiputra, that means the native group. That's one of the reasons why we choose this area, West Kalimantan. And also, it's a sort of echoing to the presentation about the disaster. Well, nowadays, West Kalimantan is considered relatively, compared to other places in Indonesia, with a relatively harmonious ethnic relationship. Okay, and because it's considered far away from the capital, Jakarta, and so it's less affected by the central government's order and all the ethnic, really bloody conflict happening in Jakarta. And also because of its ethnic composition, Chinese has up to around 30%. And the rest of the indigenous population is classified into the Muslim group and the non-Muslim group. So, but this is the current harmony among different ethnic groups. One of the reasons is that starting from World War II, this place has suffered a lot of atrocity. You know, both during the war and also in the Suharto era. Okay, because of a lot of persecution, and so that, and of course the healing process is. They just hope that they will have the current knowledge and current professional help of disaster survival and the resilience consideration. But they made it through decades of mutual reconciliation and so on and experience. Yes, it is a sensitive issue. But nowadays, it's treatable. It's treatable from our point of view. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so do you see much, we have a term mandalization of culture, that the culture is merging. Mm-hmm. We take different parts of culture, yeah?
Yeah, I think one of the examples is what I show in this shamans gathering.
Yeah.
You know, the shaman form almost a community. There are around 500 based on official statistics. There are over 500 shamans practicing in the city, in not a very big city. It's a big city about 200,000 people. The shaman help each other, and of course they're competing with each other for client. And but the reason why there are Dayak shaman and ethnic Chinese shaman is because they have a similar traditional religion. Because the so-called traditional Chinese folk religion is basically very close to shamanism. Okay, so you can see this guy is a Dayak by birth, but he practiced Chinise shaman because he's possessed by a Chinese deity. Okay, so you can see this guy dressed like a Ming or Qing dynasty mandarins dress while doing ritual. And the other guy next door may be an ethnic Chinese by birth, but he's possessed by a Dayak deity, by a Dayak spirit, and he dressed like a Dayak, put a python around him, and put a feather and all this Dayak. So that's one of the major, and that is one of the major subjects of study in anthropology, studying this part of the cultural borrowing.
And can both types of tradition charge a similar fee to the clients? Or was it different hierarchy?
The fee charge for daily practice. My neighbor don't feel well and he's worrying about his children somewhere else and come to me for consulting. Those kind of daily service are based on individual shamans' efficacy. Whether this shaman is more potential, has more potence, has more magical power, and has a reputation, he will charge more.
Right.
But a novice may charge less. But for this kind of official ceremony on festival day, they are all paid. They are all financed by the city government.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the second paper? The civil engineering? Yes, Ravi?
No, I just have two observations I'd like to make. The first one is actually the two papers on disaster. I think it was well presented, and this is one area perhaps that researchers in bioethics can go into. Recently I wrote a paper for a journal on disaster communication, and there I looked at the idea of indigenous knowledge, how indigenous knowledge have an impact on decision making on victims. And one of in my research, in my desktop research essentially, I came across a few articles on the Mount Merapi, which is actually in Yogyakarta. Mount Merapi is the volcano there. And they found that, very interestingly so, that the people the inhabitants of that, people who are staying surrounding the mountain, don't really listen or rather observe to instruction given by the authorities, right? When they are asked to evacuate, they will look at signs, right, that they have been told for generations that now when you see the mountain is angry, so therefore you need to look at signs. And if you don't see the signs, then it's still okay, right? So there is a lot of very interesting thing about indigenous knowledge of people living in disaster zones. These are some of the areas that you can look at in terms of going into disaster ethics, number one. Number two, our professor from the very interesting. Coming from the region, Malaysia, I think it's very interesting when we look at how, I'm also a bit, when I first heard about the southbound policy, I was wondering what Taiwan is trying to do. Alright, they are looking at why there is a sudden interest, which is good nevertheless. Okay. But when it comes to this idea of Southeast Asia, when you look at the whole of Southeast Asia, it's actually influenced either by the Indians or by Chinese. You can, so there was this period of several hundred years where Indian conquerors came in, Indian Rajas and Maharajas came and conquered. And you have, although the Chinese did not conquer, but there was influence. So this whole area of Southeast Asia is mixed, between the two civilizations, and you find it everywhere in Southeast Asia. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any responses, any comments?
But I think that the most important issue is that I think that you are expert in civil engineering. And my question is that if there is massive disaster and then there's some kind of massive landscape change. So what information you want to know from the local community? If you can teach us how to provide you correct information when we need your help, what kind of information you might need for the English community? Could you give us some suggestions?
Okay, basically, as my understanding is, the topic I will introduce today is kind of before the disaster occurred.
Yeah.
And I think your question is more related to the after the disaster occurred. So, Maybe I would like to make my point a little bit more clear. So I think one of the most important conclusions in my presentation is we provide a very specific design regulation for engineers to follow. But to be honest, we try to prepare before a disaster. But your question is after, and to be honest, I haven't done any research on topics related to this field. So sorry about that. Maybe I cannot provide any a solid answer to or response to your question. Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much to everybody. I think we need to get ready for going to the restaurant. Thank you for the